To order. Ms. Bowie, could you please call the roll?
Good afternoon. Stephanie Adams.
Here.
Nelson Boyer.
Here.
Judy Justice. Stephanie Craybill.
Here.
Hugh McManus.
Here.
Stephanie Walker.
Here.
And Pete Wildeboer.
Present.
All right, to start off our evening, we will have a work session and we will be discussing suspension data quarterly update. And I believe, Ms. Varnum, are you going to be presenting to us this evening? Good evening. We're moving.
So I'm really happy to bring to you a brief first quarter review related to our removals from the classroom, it could be in-school suspension or out-of-school suspension. I would like to share in the opening of this that quarter one just concluded yesterday, and to provide the data today, it's going to be that first glimpse. But of course, it's going to be not as much as the data we can analyze in the next week or two following the closing of the quarter. Because of course we want to make better comparisons and use multiple points of data. So at this point, this is the data that we can provide to you this quickly. So, when I turn this for you, you are. I am. So K-5 first quarter data. I want to share with you the data that we've collected in our dashboard tool, which is called Educator's Handbook. And this is the second school year in which we've been using Educator's Handbook. So we are pulling from an older data source for some of the data, but it's still applicable. But in Educator's Handbook, we have, we aren't in a situation where we have to continue to pull reports because our data sits on a live dashboard. But we did pull them for the comparison's sake. ISS is one of the data points, including partial days. So we're going to share with you assignment of ISS, but some of that is not full day.
Ms. Varnum, can you just say what ISS and OSS is as we get started?
In-school suspension. ISS is in-school suspension, and so that is a removal from the classroom, but not a removal from school. And OSS is out-of-school suspension, which would include a removal from school.
Thank you.
Additionally, we'll provide to you instructional and restorative responses. Those have not been completely categorized since we are just providing you first quarter data that ended yesterday. But I definitely want to provide you more of the high use of those practices in lieu of long-term suspension. In this graphic here, showing you 2017 and 2019 in-school suspension by the numbers. Please note, so as I've been sharing with you, the schools that are a part of our Behavior Leadership Foundations, PLC, which stands for Professional Learning Community. Again, this is our first cohort. Those schools are identified in orange. The schools highlighted in yellow are our exemplary schools, which are a part of the cohort, but they are a part of the cohort in a different way. They're able to provide modeling and examples of what's being shared. So in 2017, you can see first quarter in-school suspension by school. And then you have in the next block, 2019 first quarter in-school suspension by school. And I won't read through all of the comparisons, but it provides a visual just for comparison's sake. I would like to bring your attention to the total ISS assigned, again, in-school suspension assigned. In 2017 was 101. In 2019, 42. So I'll move on to the next. 2017 and 2019 out-of-school suspension by the numbers. Again, our schools highlighted in orange are in our cohort for Behavior Leadership Foundations, and our schools highlighted in yellow are those two exemplary schools. And our exemplary schools, again, are College Park and Snipes. So 2017 first quarter, you have that. You can see the comparison from school or by school in the different years, and then in 2019 first quarter as well. The total out-of-school suspension assignments for 2017 among the schools was 185. In 2019, it was 154. So when we move to current, this school year, in-school suspension by the numbers, again, reminding you we have orange versus yellow. Orange are our schools involved in our pilot. We have the total K-5 in-school suspension assignments for first quarter at 59. I want to highlight for you, as you can see, Snipes, one of our exemplary schools, has a higher number. One thing that Snipes is doing in lieu of out-of-school suspension is utilizing their in-school suspension not just solely for removal from the classroom, but also for intervention building. And so they are using a little bit of a different model. So those students are going into in-school suspension. They're not necessarily having a packet of work to complete. They're going through interventions that are targeted to the reason or the concern that may be the root cause that got them into that removal from the classroom. So on the surface, that might look like an alarm, but in practice, it's not, because they're actually addressing the root cause. So that did raise the number a bit. So you can see why there's just looking at the numbers without the context is a little confusing. I'll move on to the out-of-school suspension by the numbers. Again, our schools in orange are a part of our behavior leadership foundations, and the ones in yellow are our exemplary schools. Our total K-5 out-of-school suspension assignments for first quarter is at 26. So this is where you'll see the majority of the helpful information. In the 3-year comparison of first quarter out-of-school suspension and in-school suspension, you can see out-of-school suspension with that significant decline. And then again, looking only at the schools in the cohort that you can see on previous pages, it's a calculation of all of the suspensions. And then the 3-year comparison, first quarter of ISS, and we've talked about that increase from Snipes and how they're utilizing those targeted interventions. Overall, I would like to say that the schools have done an exceptional job in identifying alternatives to suspension, to out-of-school suspension, because even with this increase in in-school suspension, those students are still in the school building, but we know that the majority of those are, again, targeted interventions. And as a quick reminder, the Behavior Leadership Foundation's Cohort 1, I'm going to share with you a little bit about where they are in this process. Again, this is about being proactive, preventative, and instructional. Again, as I've shared, these are the schools, and this, of course, is a review. We know that these school teams have principals, their grade level representatives, their multi-tiered systems of support representative, the person that's running their problem-solving team, a student support representative, which would either be a counselor or a school social worker, and then they have EC, exceptional children, which would be our special ed staff. And then others of them have additional team members, such as a teacher assistant, an itinerant teacher, and then an assistant principal. But these are our list of schools participating. As a reminder, this is 6 full-day sessions that have been operating from August through, we are scheduled out through January. Included in this are universal screeners for behavior, and universal screeners provide an overall baseline picture of where there might be risk factors when it comes to behavior, but it also provides an idea of protective factors. How many social competencies are we seeing through our social emotional learning? Supplemental and intensive intervention programming. Examples of those are Mind Up and Zones of Regulation. And then, of course, ongoing coaching and site-based problem solving. I have to say this is one of the most important pieces of this process, the ongoing coaching and the site-based problem solving. Problem solving at a district level does not support the nuance of students and the skills of staff in school buildings. It has to be site-based and school-based problem solving. In the scope and sequence, we have completed all of the first 3 sessions, and so those outcomes, of course, are those school mission statements and their marketing plan. We're going to hear more from schools and what they're doing with those. Their school-wide guidelines for success. Of course, their school-wide behavior plan, and that's attached to policy 4302 that provides for that school management of student behavior. A 3-level system for responding to behavior, and then what their written plan is, their game plan is for handling office discipline referrals. We have completed, well, actually, no, not yet. Session 4, social and emotional learning, and then we are looking at our date for early November for relationships, staff, student, families, and community stakeholders. And then our next step will be in January, and that'll be the data analysis piece for sustaining and continuous improvement. So in this, the school will have one of their outcomes will be their core, meaning involving all students, social emotional learning implementation plan. So when you see SEL, that's our favorite acronym for social and emotional learning. Processes and procedures for fidelity checks in that. Accountability is extremely important. Our plans to address adult SEL, so the social emotional needs, the social emotional learning of our staff and all other adults supporting students. The plan for capturing the voice of not only our staff and our students, but also our family and community. And then, of course, data review and feedback schedules. And stay tuned for more updates along the way. More updates in student data, more updates in outcomes from the school cohort.
Great, thank you, Ms. Farnham. That is good news to see those numbers decreasing over the last couple of years. I'd like to open.
Sorry.
I'd like to open it up to board members.
Making sure
for
my hand's up.
questions. Ms. Craybill, yes.
Yeah, so I had a couple questions for you, Ms. Barn. So, could you give us, give me an example of like what a targeted intervention strategy might be, and like what that looks like what would I as a teacher do?
Okay, so one of the targeted interventions, of course, would be restorative practices. So if you are observing a conflict between peers, you would go back to the language that has been provided that common language that's been provided as a part of our social emotional learning, like maybe classroom meeting or maybe a particular lesson through harmony, and identify where the breakdown may have happened. Listening to others' perspectives might have been a part of the breakdown, and so creating that restorative conversation between 2 peers so that they begin to really hear, well, that's not what I was trying to say to you. Well, that's what I heard you saying. And so that would be one. That's a really big one. But what these plans cover are supporting teachers in returning to lessons that they have taught through either harmony, mainly through harmony, but also through other social emotional skills like mind up and zones of regulation to support them intervening and interacting with students to help them understand how to work through some of those conflicts, as an example.
Great. Vivian, did you have another one too?
I did have one.
Yeah. Go for it.
That's want him to go first?
Okay, yeah, Mr. Wildebohr.
Just a quick question. So basically, my understanding of this is we're about halfway through the training for these schools, right?
Maybe a little bit more, yes,
Okay.
but about halfway.
About halfway, okay. All right.
Yep, we're moving quickly.
Okay. And so we should be done by the end of January with
Yes.
these schools?
Yes.
Okay, and then-
Now, we'll be done with the formal professional development, the formal training piece. The coaching and the feedback schedules will be something that happens over a period of time. So we don't ever really let go of them. We stay involved.
Anyone else before Ms. Craybill?
Okay, my turn again. So I'm not familiar with, in my years in our school system with an ISS program in the elementary school. It's pretty much been for middle school and high school, and they have a dedicated staff person that does that. Are each of these elementary schools, do they have that person? Like, is it the social worker, the counselor, or an additional teacher that we added, to the staff?
So they're all using it a little bit differently. And before I would answer you and give incorrect information, I'd want to bring that information back to you or provide it to you at another time. But the models for in-school suspension, of course, can definitely vary from a removal from class for de-escalation and kind of respite, or to kind of just remove from an audience because a lot of times that's the motivation for some of the behaviors that we see. Other times it's very much about skill building and working through very specific interventions. So we have a model that we think makes really good sense, but I can't, I would want to bring it back to you and tell you how each school is using it.
Okay, yes, that was the next question was, will we, do you think, maybe on another report, maybe have at least one of your people from your model schools come and share with us how it's working? 'Cause I know it's not easy, depending, but I would love to hear, and I don't want to go to their school and say, hey, take me to your ISS room, I want to see, that, because that's not productive, but would love to hear from our teachers, and the school staffs, is it working? I feel better about it. I'm seeing results. I mean, is that something that we might expect at some point?
Absolutely. I think that would be a great plan. That is what we have them working through their marketing plan, how they are engaging their school community on their successes and also some of the trouble spots for them. So I think it would be great for them to come and present to you. So of course, at the will of the board.
For the quarterly reports, and we appreciate this because we know that this has been rolling out over the past couple months, could we say that probably in February, at that point, the training will have been completed? You said that there will be additional data that we'll be able to collect, so we can expect to see some results in February and potentially what Ms. Crable was saying about having one of the schools potentially talk about their experience. Is that something we can
that
look
would be
towards?
great. Yeah.
Okay, all right, February. Can't
Sounds
believe
good.
we're looking at 2022. There it is. All right, any other questions or comments? Mr. Bullier?
Yeah, over the last several months, I think the thing I hear most when people hear that I'm on a board of education is, oh my God, I'm so sorry. And, I don't feel that way at all because of this type of work. And, I like setting these markers because I think if we don't hold ourselves accountable, we won't be able to legitimately hold anybody else accountable for what we're trying to achieve. This is a non-negotiable for me. Because it's the right thing to do. It's long overdue. And I'm so pleased with the progress we've made, and I just know that there's more to come. So thank you to you and your staff, and thank you to the staff at the school level, because like you said, this can't come from on high. It has to come from within. So thank you very much for what you're continuing to do for our district.
Thank you.
And thank you, Dr. Faust, for
I would like
prioritizing
to
this.
add the school teams have been very engaged in this work and very positive about the opportunity to work together on this.
Ms. Allen.
Great, yes, Mr. McManus.
Is it possible, Dr. Smith, we could get either the same or another teacher also to present our next EDI? About the proposal?
Specifically about EDI?
About, the suspension and what they're doing, and the success, et cetera.
Absolutely. To share with EDI, absolutely.
Ms. Walker?
No, yeah, I mean, I'd be fine if Julie's willing to do it. I was just going to say, I know that Julie and Susan have been out there in the community, and I just want to notate that too, because I've actually been on a couple Zooms where they presented, and there are actually some opportunities in the community for them to come out. It's October 30th, actually. I'll say that on announcement too. I just wanted to bring that up, that they're going to be there representing the schools, and talking about this, so.
Yes, and thank you for mentioning that. My partner in this, Susan Cole, has done a phenomenal job facilitating the sessions and joining me in these community events. And she is on the EDI work group and has been sharing some of this information. So we'll talk.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, Ms. Craven.
Okay, so one last. So have we communicated with the parents at these schools, just the sort of new way of doing things, and so that they understand, like if their child comes home and says, how was your day? I didn't do anything. I had to sit in this room and talk about, my temper. I mean, do parents understand the new approach that we're taking, in not sending kids home? I heard a great example of this one mom who, the child just wanted to be out of school, and the mom came and they sat in the parking lot and did homework because he said, well, aren't we going home? No, you needed to be out of the classroom, so we're going to sit in the parking lot. Now, I don't know if that's like the best restorative practice, but that sounded to me like a parent who was on board. So have we done that?
So again, that's the kind of work that we are training the schools
Okay.
and helping them create that marketing strategy, the plan for communicating with their families and understanding expectations. So again, so that it's not a district level approach saying, hey, all schools are doing this, and then for somebody to say, well, my school doesn't quite do it like that. We want the schools to really explain what their plan for the management of student behavior looks like, feels like, sounds like, from the student voice to the parent voice and the staff voice. So that is a part of this work.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you very much for preparing this presentation, and we look forward to future successes and achievements along this conversation. Thank you very much, Ms. Barnum.
Thank you.
All right. On that note, we'll continue moving through our agenda. We will begin with our invocation and Pledge of Allegiance. So if everyone please stand. We do not have anyone for the invocation this evening, so I just ask that everyone just take a moment of silence. Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. You may be seated. And just as a reminder for the meeting, as I do every meeting, please maintain your masks throughout this meeting, which means above your nose and under your chin. Thank you very much. All right, next item on the agenda is the approval of the agenda. Is there a motion?
Move to approve.
Thank you, Mr. Bullier.
Nelson, would you state your motion, please?
Excuse me?
State your motion. No more move to approves. Yeah,
Move to approve the agenda.
thank you.
All right, we have a first to approve the agenda. Is there a second? Thank you, Mr. Wildeboer. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? The agenda is approved, 6-0. Next item on the agenda is a closed session pursuant to North Carolina General Statutes 143-318.11, A1, 3, and 6, to consider personnel matters and to maintain the confidentiality of personnel records under North Carolina General Statutes 115C-319 and -321. To consult with the board's attorney to preserve attorney-client privilege information, including in the case captioned John Doe v. New Hanover County Board of Education et al., New Hanover County Superior Court Case number 19-CVS-2745. Do I hear a motion?
Move for closed session pursuant to the statutes.
Thank you, Mr. Bullier. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Craybill. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? We are in closed session, 6-0. We good? All right. Welcome back. Next item on our agenda is the approval of the minutes. The minutes are from the special meeting on September 3rd, 2021. Do I hear a motion?
Move to approve the minutes?
Thank you, Mr. Bollier. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Wildebohr. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? September 3rd, 2021 minutes, special meeting minutes are approved 6-0. Next item, old business, amendment to policy 2310. Mr. Bollier, I believe this one goes to you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The board revised its policy 2310, public participation at board meetings. We wanted to make sure that we were able to provide the public with ample time to review both documents and the agenda itself. So the attachments along with the agenda will be available earlier. In order for our staff to do that effectively, we needed to move the agenda additions from board members to 6 working days prior to the agenda review meeting. That gives everybody the time they need to be as transparent as possible.
All right, and we need to approve this change.
The recommendation is for approval from the board.
All
And you
right.
can see the change right there.
Just 2 words.
Just
Yep.
the 2 words, right?
Agenda
Okay,
review.
so you have heard the recommendation. Is there a motion? Thank you, Mr. McManus. The motion is to approve the revision to policy 2310. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Wildebohr. Any discussion? All those, oops, sorry, Ms.
So
Walker.
just to clarify, so it's just those 2 words, and it's just 6 working days, so can you just tell us, so I just know for math, when we have to get our requests in to you?
So the agenda review typically takes place on Wednesday afternoons.
Afternoon.
So that takes it to, I think we figured out Thursday by 5 p.m.
Thursday by 5, okay.
Yep.
Madam Chair,
Yes, ma'am.
this applies to our community that wants to put in. So I'm just thinking, it's hard enough for us to remember to turn it in, but I think we should put it on, we'll put it on our calendars. But is it worth somehow posting that so that our community knows clearly that you have to have it in, 11 days ahead, or, whatever that is, because I don't want people saying, well, I didn't know, and you're changing this, and even though I don't think we get agenda things from the community that often, but we do get a fair amount from the same people, and so just, you don't want to ignore them.
If there's any suggestions on how to do that, whether it's just adding to the agenda, we're in the yellow box maybe, Kristen,
Yeah.
where we have the information about call to the audience, maybe we can just put, if you have an agenda item you are submitting, please do so, and we can put a date. Is that doable? All right.
Yeah, that would be awesome, thanks, I like that.
All right, any other discussion? All right, so the motion on the table is to approve the update to policy 2310. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Policy 2310, public participation at board meetings is approved as demonstrated. All right, next item on the agenda are our COVID-19 updates, and I believe are we inviting Ms. Varnum up to present, or are we having the health department come up? Okay. Ms. Turner, would you like to come up? It's been a few months. Welcome back.
Okay, and I did want to, I am Carla Turner, New Hanover County Public Health Assistant Director. Thanks. Haven't seen you guys in a while, but with me today, I am very blessed to have David Howard, our New Hanover County Public Health Director.
Welcome, Mr.
So we're
Howard.
glad to have him here with me tonight. So I'm just going to give you some brief little pieces of information that I pulled together for you. I wanted to share our vaccination rates in New Hanover County. And obviously, I want you to pay attention to 12 to 17. Of those students who have had 1 dose, 12 to 17 years old, just over 52% have had 1 dose, and just under, I believe it's 48% are fully vaccinated. So that's encouraging, very encouraging, almost half of that population. And you can see 18 to 24, and then I would look at 25 to 49 and 50 to 64 as far as like your current employee base. So those are very good vaccination rates. Do we want to be higher? We do. The overall state New Hanover County rate overall for 1 dose is at 61% for all age groups, and fully vaccinated is sitting at about 58%. So we certainly want that to move up, but we're higher than the state average, so that's encouraging. I just gave you a quick pie chart with the breakdown of total cases, and that's since this all began in March of 2020. And as you can see, our 0 to 17, so your student population, those cases that make up about 13.5% of our total cases. But the best graph I have to show you is the next one, positive cases by date. And you can see we started off the first week of school, and for about 2 weeks we climbed. We saw some increase in positives. Now granted, the majority of those positives were not transmitted at school. Children were sick and came to school, or didn't come to school, but of the school age. And as you can see, since September 6th, we have started to decline, where last Thursday, we run our weeks from Friday to Thursday, and so last Thursday for that previous week, we had 38 positives throughout all schools, and that was very, very encouraging. Obviously, we tend to see our more positives among our athletic teams, but we are certainly doing everything we can to work with the school system to help address that. I will share with you, I checked the state positivity rate before I came up, excuse me, for New Hanover County, and as of 5 o'clock this afternoon, New Hanover County is sitting at 4.9%, which is like a stand up and clap kind of thing. So I'm excited about that. We want to hold the line on that. So any questions just about that data?
Yes, Ms. Craybill.
So your data doesn't always match what our media is reporting. So is there another website that they're looking at that is different, or are they just behind in extrapolating, graphs? Because the last time I saw on the news, it was like 6.4. I'm like, and I heard we were down, so I'm like, how is that?
I don't know. I believe they probably get theirs from the state, DHHS, NC
Okay.
website. That's where we get our percent positivity. Actually, the CDC's percent positivity is a little bit different for us than the state, but I'll let David address that, not by a lot.
Right, so that may have been a region or a jurisdiction different. The CDC's numbers comes from a 7-day rolling average.
Okay.
The state uses 14-day rolling average. That's really the only difference. The good news is their number at the CDC and our number with the state is not very different, which means they're tracking very closely, and we're seeing a consistent decrease as opposed to an up and down and up and down.
Yes. Sometimes it's just when you do like your screenshot or your screen grab. Okay, thank you.
Others?
Question.
Ms. Walker.
Oh, and I don't know if you're done presenting, but I was curious what you're hearing about vaccinations for the younger cohort. I know it's on the news, I've heard it, but I didn't know what you guys were hearing.
Talk about that? 5 to 11 vaccines.
Yeah, so we're looking at what's the meeting date?
October 26th, the FDA is
26th,
going to meet.
the meeting is happening with, is that FDA or?
FDA.
So as you're familiar, there's a lot of checks and balances in that system. So the FDA Advisory Committee meets, advises the FDA, then the ACIP meets, advises the CDC. All of those have to fall into place before that's made allowable to us to administer that vaccine. So the meeting on the 26th will be followed by other meetings with the Advisory Committee, which is independent for the CDC, the Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices. So we're preparing. We're already talking to the state. We have a plan. We have allocation on the way of that special dose. That's a totally different dose and totally different vial and vaccination product. So we're ready to go.
That's awesome, that's great.
And I will say, so what would happen is once the CDC gives their recommendations and Dr. Walensky approves that, then our state is currently working on the standing order right now that we work under, so those should simultaneously be available. And so we're looking, November 3rd is what we're hearing is the potential date that it'll be possible to roll that out.
Just around the corner. I have one more follow-up question. So I know last meeting, Nelson mentioned boosters were available for teachers, but some got Moderna and some got Pfizer, so are they going to approve the mixing now?
Actually, the FDA approved the Moderna booster as well as the Johnson & Johnson booster last Thursday and Friday, but we're still waiting for the CDC, the ACIP, the Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices, to meet to put forth their recommendations and for the CDC director to sign off on that. So yes, we have actually increased our number of Moderna vaccines that we have available. So we have a plan for that as well. We've been doing really well with our Pfizer boosters. But if you got Pfizer, you need to get a Pfizer booster. If you got Moderna, you need to get a Moderna booster. But Moderna and Janssen aren't quite approved yet.
Not yet, okay, thank you.
Yes, Mr. Billiard.
Yeah, thank you guys for all you've done to keep the community safe for these 20 long months. I hear hospital rates are low, which is very exciting. And I guess my question, with regards to the school system is, what metric are we using to determine when we're going to end the emergency orders, the mask restrictions? What are we looking for to give us an indicator that, we can start to move forward with some of this?
So it was a question when we're going to.
The metrics, like what are we
What
looking at
metrics
to
are we
think about
using to
the mask?
determine when we end
So
the mask
those are-
mandate and the emergency order?
The two main metrics that the HHS board is looking at are what we just reported, the percent positive from testing, community-wide testing. And that's important because the hospital's testing is a subset, and their rate is still higher, 8-9%, because they're testing their inpatient population. So 5% was the mark, which has always been the mark, right, for sustained low transmission, and that's what that number indicates, transmission rate. And also cases. We're using locally cases per day on a 14-day rolling average. Right now, that's down in the 30s based on the state data. So cases for the past 14 days divided by 14 gives us a case rate of only in the 30s per day. Those, we hit a high of 300 in some cases just 6-7 weeks ago in a single day. So that's how far we've come with community's assistance in using face coverings and all the other measures and getting vaccinated. It's not moving very rapidly, but vaccination rates are increasing. And of course, we'll continue that throughout the many months and possibly years.
And speaking of vaccinations, where, I know that you are running clinics still, so if people are looking to get vaccinated, what are some of their options?
Okay. We are offering booster vaccines at our mall site,
Okay.
at Independence Mall, and those are by appointment only. So you can go to Take My Shot NC, it's from the DHHS website, and you make an appointment, and that's Pfizer. That's Mondays and Fridays from noon to 5, Tuesdays and Thursdays from noon to 7 p.m. So, and like David was saying, with the 5 to 11, we are planning how we want to roll that out. And the state has said when those vaccines become available, first and second doses for the pediatric population will be our priority. So we'll still have booster doses, but we'll really be pushing the vaccines for the 5 to 11. And as far as the hospital data, the data we received yesterday, they had 17 patients admitted for COVID, which is so much lower than what it was 6 or 7 weeks ago when they had over 130. So that's also very encouraging.
42 recovering.
Yeah, 42 recovering out of that 10-day period, but still considered recovering from COVID, but those actively in their COVID status were 17.
Great. Ms. Crable.
Yeah, my first question was, Mr. Bullier asked, so that was great. When we're ready to do the youth vaccinations, is there any way possible that we can, use our clinics or use our school nurses to help, or use our school sites as vaccination centers? Is that an option?
Those are things we are certainly discussing. The hospital, we're going to meet with the hospital on Thursday, we hope, to talk about if we can partner, what we can do to partner. The one thing about the 5 to 11, so for 16 and older, anybody 16 to 18 can come in and get a COVID vaccination without their parents' permission. They do not have to have parental consent. Minors are 15 and under, and so those children have to have parental consent. So that's a piece of it we'd have to make sure of. And I personally, as a parent, if I had a 6-year-old, I may want to be with them when they're getting their COVID vaccine. So we have talked about potential for schools, but we have not made any particular plans on that. So we're going to meet with the hospital to talk with them later this week.
And I'll just add that that's certainly a possibility if we do special days and that kind of thing so the parents can plan ahead. But also we're working with the state to create a pretty smooth path for PEDS offices and primary care offices to accept this vaccination, even if it's us receiving it and getting it to them. There are already a couple in town signed up as a provider, and they're going to receive some allocation. So if we increase that number, many hands make light work, so that could pay off as well.
All right, any other questions? No? All right, Mr. Howard, welcome to your first board meeting. It was fairly uneventful. And
Yeah.
Ms. Turner, thank you as always for being here, and thank you for sharing the information and taking the time tonight. All right, moving along. Next item on the agenda is the fingerprinting update, and Dr. Barnes. you are going to give us some updates.
Yes, good evening. I did provide for you a one-pager with just some information. I wanted to go through that real quick and answer any questions you might have. Obviously, our goal is to add fingerprinting as an additional security measure for our staff and to ensure the safety of our students. As you know, our pre-K students already require fingerprinting, so this would add the rest of our staff, including volunteers, to this process. The machine itself will be housed over at the Sheriff's Department. They have the direct upload and link to APHIS, which is the fingerprinting site. We have determined which machine we want to use. The cost is about $8,000, and the upkeep and the cost to fingerprint all of our employees for a year will be about $8,000 a year as well. This, again, is a small price to pay for the added security. We always ask employees on their application have to disclose any events that they have. We also do a thorough background check with BIB, which is the Background Investigation Bureau. However, you can change your name, but you can't change your fingerprints. So it provides an additional level of security for us, for our employees. We have the MOU developed, and we've sent that over to the Sheriff's Office for review. So we're moving along through that process of working with the Sheriff's Department to secure that MOU and then purchase the equipment. Our goal is that they will staff the machine, give us preferential access to it, especially during the times in summer when we have our high turnover time and high hiring season. And we will staff that with school resource officers during the summer to make sure that we do not have to wait to get access to that machine. We shouldn't see a huge turnover or wait in receiving information back. It's about the same as what it will be for our Background Information Bureau return. There is a little bit of a hold for any fingerprinting that's out of state or out of country. That takes a little bit longer to come back, but we should get the ones in local state within a few hours of putting it in.
Any questions or comments? Ms. Craybill?
So this would be for all employees?
Yes, ma'am.
And that would include substitute teachers,
Yes,
know,
ma'am.
in that category?
Yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
You said volunteers as well, right? You
Yes,
did
ma'am.
say that as well. It's in new hires, it says here, not current.
I'm sorry?
It says new hires here, and not current employees.
We had not intended to do
Okay.
all of our current employees. This will be moving forward with our new employees. Yes, sir. Oh, I'm sorry.
Mr. Wildebohr. Yeah.
Sorry.
I think I must have heard you wrong, but it says here that it's $8,000 and then $2,000 a year, but I thought you said $8,000 a year.
That includes the cost of fingerprinting each new employee as well. We hire about 800 in a year.
Gotcha.
And they will give us a lower rate, so they're going to charge us $10 instead of $20, but we do reimburse, or we cover the cost of that, so it would be the $8,000 for all the new employees plus the $2,000 upkeep of the machine.
Okay, thank you.
Or it's 600, I'm sorry, about 6,500 for new employees. We have about 650 or so.
Okay, thank you.
Dr. Barnes, do you need an action on this tonight, or is this for information?
No, the next step will be to do the purchase orders. I want to wait until I get the MOU back from the Sheriff's Department, and then we'll move forward with the purchase of the machine, purchase of signing the MOU at that
Great.
point.
All right, any other questions? We appreciate the movement on this and appreciate the
Yeah,
focus
very
on
good.
safety for all of our students in schools moving forward.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you very
Thank you.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to new business. Oops, I just messed up my screen. I apologize. Okay. So do we have Mr. Mildorf on Zoom? Oh, great. So our next item is the North Carolina School Board's Action Center. For those board members that were elected in the most recent election, you have not had the opportunity to have had a presentation from the Action Center. NCSBA, of course, is the North Carolina School Boards Association, who we have a very close relationship with, and they provide many services that we are able to utilize. Mr. Mildorf is the, correct me if I'm wrong, governmental relations manager, correct me? Bruce?
Manager, director, or whatever you want to call it, however you want to title me.
He is going to talk with us this evening about what the Action Center provides and why it would potentially be something that this board would want to consider enrolling in. And so thank you, Bruce, for being here with us this evening. We know it's a late hour on a Tuesday night, but appreciate your time.
I work all hours, never stop. So, no, thank you for having me. I'm honored to be here. Appreciate your interest in the North Carolina School Boards Action Center just to give you a little background, I joined the association back in 2014 as the Associate Director of Government Relations. Was moved up the chain this past year to Director of Government Relations. Prior to me coming on board, the North Carolina School Boards Association Board of Directors decided to move forward with the possibility of having an action center. And the reason that was necessary is because the School Boards Association is a 501c3. As a 501c3, we are limited the amount of funds that we can use towards advocacy. With a 501c4, you are able to increase that amount. The reason it was necessary is because at the time, the School Boards Association had 2 lobbyists, and there was a big push towards putting more funding to charter schools. And the charter schools had more than a dozen lobbyists. So that kind of set off some red flags. So the board of directors decided to approve the Action Center. And just to be clear, the bylaws are very clear, that they state that no funds can be used to either endorse, support, oppose, contribute to any political party or candidate for public office. That the sole purpose of the Action Center is to strictly provide additional resources to help promote the North Carolina School Board Association's legislative agenda. And that agenda is voted on by, all of you, boards across the state. As far as the benefits, it is only funded through contributions, board contributions. It allows us to increase our lobbying capacity. So we've been able to bring on an additional lobbyist. So I looked up just before coming on here. The charter schools are still well above a dozen. The League of Municipalities currently has 12, and we've had several, while we work together on some issues, lately we've also had opposing views on some issues. So that really helps. We've also used the funds to get a little more creative on issues. So we are getting more involved, we're producing more videos. And one of them we used for kind of a battle we were in with the charter schools. A few years ago, we were one vote away from having traditional public schools provide millions of our funds to charters. I don't know if there's any time, I think I could probably hold that video up. But just this past year, the county commissioners were able to get a provision in the Senate budget that would make it so school boards could no longer sue county commissioners over a lack of capital funds. A few years ago, we both agreed to terms on the day-to-day operations, the funds for current expense, but for capital, they wanted to make it so that their decision was final and that was it. So in a matter of days, we put together a video, had paid social media, special marketing. It was all over the state, and it was one of the last items to be determined in the state budget, but we were able to get it out. So that was helpful. And because we have the additional lobbyists, in the past, we wouldn't really get involved in local issues. There were just too many of them, unless it was, precedent setting. We just didn't have that capacity. But with the additional lobbyists, for those districts that contribute, we will help support you either on an issue that you'd like to see passed, something that you oppose and you would like support there, so we'll testify in committee, we'll meet with members, I say members, legislators, one-on-one, whatever it takes. All you have to do is request our support. So there's benefits statewide, there's benefits locally. You know, I'm available to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you. Mr. Boyer?
Thank you very much for that presentation. Do you know offhand how many districts in the large district consortium are contributing members?
I think so far for the 21-22 school year, and we're still getting contributions in. I think we're up to 66 or 67 this year. Back in 2019, I think it was 70. And so, you know, thanks to the, like I said, the contributions, without the contributions, we would not be able to pivot on a dime when these issues pop up. I mean, it's not as if we have months' notice. Hey, we're going to file this bill that you're not going to support. We just want to give you a heads up so you can get your defenses ready. You know, we've been able to push against, and so far very successfully, with
Just a quick follow-up.
with what we're able to do now.
Thank you. Just a quick follow-up. Brass tacks, what are we talking about? How much?
So there are different tiers. It's based on ADM. I believe for New Hanover, it's 6,000. I believe that's right. We sent a notice to, I think it was the board chair and the superintendent with that information. But I'm pretty sure. The highest tier is, again, you know, this is like the finance folks, but I believe that the highest tier is 10,000, with the lowest tier being 2,000. So you're right in the middle.
All right, other questions? Mr. Wildebohr?
I was just saying, Ms. Bowie is confirming that number.
Oh, yes. Is it 6,000? All right, thank you. Ms. Walker?
Do we have to vote on it tonight?
No,
Okay.
this is not an action item. This
Okay.
is for information, for consideration, to think about, and we can talk about it at a later date.
Okay.
But Mr. Mildorf is just coming tonight, just to be able to answer any questions that we may have as we potentially consider if we want to be part of the Action Center or not. Stephanie?
So, if we were to be members in, you know, or contributing members to this, you know, Action Center, what kind of voice would we have in your decision-making? Would it be the same person that is our legislative representative to the NCSBA General Assembly? Or would we assign another person, you know, to be the listen-inner, you know, or the contributor to, not a good word. That's a Josh Smith word. I hope you're listening, Josh. So how would that work?
I don't quite get the question.
Okay, so the NCSBA General Assembly, we have a delegate that attends the meetings where we're putting together our agendas, you know, for the NCSBA
Right, so
to
at the
carry
delegate
forward.
assembly, you will have a delegate there, correct?
Okay, so do we have to have another delegate to the Action Center, or do we
No,
kind of
no.
use that same person?
So we have one legislative agenda, one delegate assembly. The Action Center just helps us promote NCSBA's legislative agenda. So there aren't two agendas, there aren't two processes. In fact, there are no employees of the Action Center. All the employees are part of the association, and really, the Action Center is nothing more than a source of funding to help us promote the legislative agenda, but also when there is legislation that will hurt LEAs to fight against that. I hope that
Okay.
answers.
No, that's it. Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
Great. Any other questions or comments?
And I'm available anytime. If you think of something after this meeting, feel free to reach out, and I'll help any way I can.
All right, Mr. Mildorf, thank you so much for being with us this evening, and we will be in touch, and thank you so much for your time.
All right, thank you, my pleasure.
Bye. All right, moving along. Next item on the agenda is the November regular board meeting. So as you know, our regular board meeting right now is scheduled for November 2nd, which is also Election Day for the municipal elections being held. And there's been some concern about people not being able to attend the meetings because if they're working polls, or just the fact that this could be a conflict for our meeting to be held. So I'd like to put it to the board, the thoughts about moving the meeting a week out. And if we were to move it a week out to November 9th, potentially we would hopefully not have a need for an interim meeting in November because Thanksgiving butts right up to that. So open the floor just to discussion and thoughts.
Madam Chair?
Yes, Mr. Bollier.
Yeah, I'd like to go ahead and just move that we move our regular board meeting to November 9th.
Okay.
I'd like to make that motion.
Motion to move November regular board meeting to November 9th. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Walker. Any other discussion?
I would just like
Can
to.
I,
Mr.
sorry.
Wildebohr? Yes.
I would just like to ask if there's any possibility, if we do that, to move the policy meeting, because that makes for a really, really, really long day. We have the policy from 9 o'clock in the morning until 12. We get a couple hours off, and then if we're going to have one meeting that month, it would be a long meeting. So I would imagine. So is there a possibility of us amending our policy to move that maybe to that Wednesday or something?
You two can.
okay, so hold that thought, because I would also like to, I don't know that that is part of this motion, but I am definitely interested in talking about it. But I'd like to amend that motion to be that we move it from the 2nd to the 9th and do not have an interim meeting, so that we're clear on, we're only having one meeting in November. So if anyone is interested in that amendment, then I would.
All right, so there's an amendment.
I don't think we schedule those. They're not mandatory in policy, so we don't have to vote to not have something that we're not required to do anyway.
But we're already having them, and it's pretty much part of the way we're doing business right now. So I just think it should be clear that we're going to have one, instead of two.
All right, so the amendment to the motion is to move the meeting to November 9th and also to not schedule an interim meeting for November beyond November 9th. All right, is there a second to the amendment?
I'll second that.
All right, thank you, Mr. Wildebohr. Any discussion to the amendment? All right, all those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? The amendment to schedule the board meeting for the 9th and no interim meeting passes 6-0. Now let's go back to the original motion with amendment. Do we need to redo that again? Colin, or are we good?
No,
I think we just passed it all.
The amendment,
Did we just pass it all?
You just said it all. Yeah.
Confusing myself now.
yeah.
There should have been a vote on the amendment and then a second vote on the motion once amended.
Now it is time to do that. Now
Okay.
it is the second vote. So now do I hear a motion? Thank you, Colin. Do I hear a motion to move the board meeting to the 9th without an interim meeting in November?
moved.
Thank you, Mr. Bollier. Second, Mr. Wildebohr. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passes 6-0. And I would recommend that policy committee members, you guys get together and have that conversation about how you want to handle that November meeting. All right. Next item on the agenda, Leandro support letter to Governor Cooper. A few board members have brought this up and wanted to have a discussion around providing support as Leandro moves forward at the state level. And I will turn this over to Mr. McManus, as he was the one that requested it for the agenda.
Oh, thank you. Well, a little short history lesson. About 25 years ago, Judge David Lee found that the state of North Carolina was not providing their adequate financial resources for a lot of our lower socioeconomic school systems, which in fact was detrimental to the growth and the success opportunities for those students and staff. it's 25 years almost to the date, maybe plus a little bit now, that has been revisited by Judge Lee and said that the legislature has the money, because they do have a big surplus this year, to in fact provide those funds to those counties. I just thought it was a great idea for our county to, I think there's a resolution already written, I won't read it, that will take a little while, but for us to sign that resolution that encourages the legislature to in fact provide those monies for those counties that are lower socioeconomic and quite frankly where the students do not have the opportunity for educational access that so many of us do.
All right, so the recommendation is
Recommend that we
to-
do sign that resolution and to support Leandro.
All right, would you like to make a motion? Would you like to make the motion?
Please.
All right, so you're making a motion to sign and submit a statement of support for the Leandro to Governor Cooper, correct? All right, is there a second?
Madam Chair, I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Bollier. Any other discussion?
I just wanted to point out that this resolution is really only for us to say that we support it. It doesn't guarantee that we're going to get any money from it because we're probably not one of those counties that this is targeted to. But I also would like to point out that based on the seminar that I went to and listened to the requirements, which a lot of you probably already know those, is that our school system is already doing a lot of what Leandro is asking, and we have been doing that for a long time. So I just wanted, our listening public to know that, we're not operating in a vacuum, and that we are doing good things, and that we may not get any monies from this, but I'm in support and solidarity with our other school boards across the state.
And that was the whole intent. I appreciate you asking that question. But we probably won't get a penny. But there are, 7, 8, or 9 school systems that absolutely have no money, and those kids are really, really suffering. And I just thought it would be a great idea for this county to care about kids other than just in New Hanover County where we can, to send this resolution in support of providing funds for those counties through the Leandro.
Well, we have a first and a second. We have had discussion. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? All right, motion passes to provide a letter of support of the Leandro case to Governor Cooper, a vote of 6-0. Thank you very much. Next item on the agenda is the substitute initiative. We welcome back Dr. Barnes to the microphone.
Good evening again, Madam Chair, board members, Dr. Fest. I had the opportunity to speak with groups of principals before I arrived as the HR superintendent here, and there was a clear and present concern among all of our principals, and that is to address our need for substitutes. Now, I want to make sure it's clear that this is not a New Hanover schools problem only. We experienced it in my last district, and it's a nationwide issue regarding sort of the teacher shortage, sort of snowballing into the substitute shortage as well. So working with the HR team, we tried and looked at 3 specific initiatives we want to implement immediately to help increase our substitute and decrease our unfilled sub rates. And I want to go through each of those because there are a couple action items I'm going to ask you for at the end of that. The first initiative you've seen before, and that's to increase substitute pay, provide an employee stipend for those who do have to cover during planning periods or during the day. And then our new thing I want to bring to you tonight is to provide permanent subs at eligible schools to help increase their fill rate. So the first one, you have seen this before, is to increase our substitute pay rate to those areas that you see on the screen here. It would increase our licensed certified fill rate to 135, and it works downward from there for the rest of the options. This will make us the highest paid substitutes in the region, and I can only find one district in the state that is outpacing this, and that is with Alamance-Burlington with 153. I do want to note as well that we receive money back from the state for substitutes at a rate of $103 a day. So that is the typical rate that most school systems are using. So we want to make sure that anyone who's thinking about becoming a sub, that we endorse that and bring them in as quick as we can with a higher salary rate. The second, and this is, to be clear, this is not a way to increase our subs. This is a way to tell our employees that we know how hard they're working. And this would enable us to do a stipend for those who have to cover during their planning period. And we did that in a way that covers both pre-K, elementary school, middle, and high school. It would enable them to get $30 a period, or if they absorb kids into their classroom, say in the elementary school, it would be $30 for the day. It recognizes and compensates our employees for the hard work they're doing and just helps spread some of that weight around, because we do know that it's hard to do your planning and do the most effective job you can as a teacher when you don't have planning day after day. The third idea, and this is the newest one I want to share with you, is to institute permanent substitutes at specifically eligible schools. So what we did is I took the fill rate for all schools for the month of September and tracked that any school that had a fill rate of 70% or lower would be eligible for a full-time permanent sub to come into their building. Now, when we talk to substitutes, one of the concerns that they have, of course, is as a substitute, you do have the choice whether you go to work or not. But if we assign you to a school every day, you're not a sub, you're an employee. Now, to do that, we would enable these people to be permanent full-time employees. They would receive benefits. So this does have a price tag to it a little bit, because it will increase the overall cost of our sub pool. But what it does is it enables those people who may be concerned about coming back to school because of the lack of health insurance, it will take that off the table. Now, the way this would work is that eligible schools would not schedule this substitute for a job prior to the morning of the day that the person reports to work. So I come in on a Tuesday morning, I would go immediately to the office. The bookkeeper or the assistant principal or principal would put me into an unfilled job for that day and then record me in that job as covering that job in our subsystem in ASOP. That will enable us to track our fill rate better. It will also enable us to charge the state for a portion of that $103 that they would pay back when someone is in a building. The way we track this is if you have over 1,000 students, we would look to issue you 2 permanent subs. If you're under 1,000, you would get 1. And then we'll continue to track this method to ensure that the fill rates are coming up and the unfilled jobs are going down over the course of a period of time. For schools that aren't eligible immediately, say you had a 75% fill rate, we'll monitor your fill rate moving forward and then bring those schools on if we need to, if we see that they're starting to track under 70% in a consistent basis. These subs will not be available for extended long-term jobs, and teachers wouldn't be able to plan for that. You wouldn't be able to go to the sub and say, hey, next Thursday I'm going to be out, can you cover me? Our normal sub pool will stay in process, our normal sub process will stay in effect, and so those jobs will get picked up by normal subs as well. One of the things we're looking to do is we're meeting with all of the December graduates from UNC Wilmington, and I've got contacts to reach out to at ECU and also Fayetteville State to try to bring those folks who are graduating at Christmas to our district now to fill some of these jobs, give them opportunity to get to know our school system a little bit, get us an opportunity to know them a little bit, and hopefully put them into jobs. This can be used as a recruiting tool as we go forward. I want to make it clear that we have talked about this being a one-year position only, because we'll need to reassess at the close of this year, depending on pandemic issues and other things, whether or not this would be something we want to continue or whether the cost is variable or not. But we know we have opportunities for teacher assistants and teachers as we move forward into next year, and this will be a great pool of applicants to already have in our system and already be working with them to slot them into jobs as we come forward. As a scientist, what you want to do is you don't want to change too many things at once, because we won't be able to assess what actually made the difference. So we've put these 3 things into place right now. We'd like to continue to monitor, and this isn't our only 3 ideas, this is just our first 3. And if we find that we're not seeing the results we need, we have more ideas in the hopper that we can go to continue this initiative if we need to add more steps. But this is from what I can research in other districts and other states, this seems to be the common solution that people are looking at. What we'll do is continue to monitor fill rates, continue to monitor those unfilled jobs, and look to fill as many of those as we can as we go forward. I've gotten September's fill rate was at 56%. Currently in the month of October, we are at 61%. So we are creeping back up, but we want to see our fill rate over 80%. That's our goal. So in summary, competitive pay for our substitutes, an employee stipend to recognize those folks who do have to step into classrooms during their planning period or throughout the day, and then create these permanent sub jobs. Right now, we have about 32 schools that would be eligible immediately. We have about 12 schools that are confidently over that 70% mark for right now. So for board support, of course, if you guys can continue to communicate substitute opportunities with constituents and folks in the community. If you have any questions or concerns, or if employees have those, direct them to me, direct them to HR so we can resolve those. And then I would ask that you guys look to approve the hourly rates for all three of the initiatives, which would be increasing the overall sub rate, allowing for a stipend for those people covering courses, and then also approve the permanent subs positions at schools.
Great. You have heard the recommendation, heard the presentation. Thank you. Love to see this innovation. Ms. Craybill, I see that you've got a question or a comment.
Of course, I have a question. It's about substitute teachers.
Yes, ma'am.
So with these permanent subs, I think it's a great idea because I've been in the sub pool for a long time, and most of our schools already have these people that are showing up every day. But they're picking up the jobs, on the system. So I think it's a good thing. Just the only concern I have is that if we're going to hire the permanent subs, is we're going to have to beef up their training just a tad, because as a substitute teacher, we get the basic training. But if you're going to be like a permanent employee, then you would need to know a lot more about what's going on in our school system. So that would be, an onboarding thing that I thought of. But I think that this is a great idea, and I wish that school board members could be substitute teachers, because I miss the class, and principals to do. I mean, I wish we were allowed. We heard at the conference that there is a district or two that are allowing. So Mary Hazel told me that it was like against some financial policy, but if it's not, then I would love to be a substitute. But that's a whole other side issue. But no, I would like to make a motion that we take Dr. Barnes' suggestion at the pay increase and the stipends for our TAs.
All right, there is a motion on the table. Is there a
Did I
second?
get it all? Did I get all the things you wanted? Did I miss one?
The permanent sub
And
salaries,
to do the permanent
the
sub.
increased substitute rate overall.
Yeah.
And also the stipend.
All those things that Mr. Barnes asked for you. Dr. Barnes.
There's a motion on the table to approve the initiatives 1, 2, and 3.
Yes.
So competitive substitute pay, employee stipend, and permanent substitutes. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Wildebohr. Mr. McManus, discussion.
I had not intended it to be retroactive. This would be moving forward.
So
Because
that's my
we would
next
have
question.
to-
What's the timeline?
So, yes, what is the timeline? When would this begin?
Well,
When it's approved? Okay, so tomorrow?
if you guys are good to go, we want to pivot
Are we
on
ready
this
to do that?
specifically.
Okay.
So I was saying, because it's absolutely needed, you know that because you're sitting here telling us, but I know
Yes, ma'am.
feedback that we are getting, it absolutely is. Teachers didn't need bathroom breaks.
Well, and I was going to say, I think they're all three outstanding ideas. I like the fact that you're not only going to say, well, we're going to do these, but you'll have other ideas in the hopper. But the one that I have to really kind of give you 2 gold stars about is the employee stipend, because I've heard so many people say that, I don't have any planning period, I'm doing this and that. And at least if we can give them something back, I think it's outstanding. So,
And please
thank you.
understand that we realize that $30 is not what we consider the worth of a teacher or someone stepping into that room. We just have to start somewhere. And I wanted to make sure that we spent the money where we could do the most good. And I think having a permanent sub in your building, when I was a principal, I had this. I paid for it myself because it's so valuable. And I had one day in an entire year where I didn't have an unfilled sub job.
That was going to be my question, actually. I wrote that down. If there are in the perfect world, there are no absences in a building, what does the permanent sub get to do?
They would be, the principals will be told that they will slot them into support. They can go into a new teacher's classroom and support them. They can help cover additional small reading groups. I don't want to say that would never happen, but it's going to happen rare enough that they will find somebody to do with them.
Great. All right, thank you. All right, we have a first and a second. Any other discussion or questions?
Yeah, one just popped up. So would several schools, suppose when we start to get to our higher fill rates, would there be a chance that 2 schools in close proximity might share a sub so that if I show up and there's no jobs, but the school right down the road that I'm a sister school, would we entertain that at all, or is it really just a school budget?
I think the hard thing for us to do is if we're going to commit to these employees, we need to commit for a period of time. So
Okay.
I would say I wouldn't pivot back until the end of the school year, because obviously we'll be monitoring sub-fill rates. What I want to do is use that to maybe add new people in, not take people out. One of the things, just because a sub, say this helps and, New Hanover High School kicks over 75%, are we then going to take them away? I think that monitoring will be to add in, not to take away, but I think we would need to do it for a chunk of period of time. I think if we see that the fill rates are in the 90s, then we can pivot back and look for some different conversations.
Ms. Adams. I'm not going to talk for long, but say, can we get an update on how it's working? What would you say a good
Of course.
timeline is for an update? Maybe a couple months, or?
It's going to take us a month to work them into the schools, if it would be okay to come back in December. I'll be still monitoring fill rates every month anyway and providing that to you folks if you would like. But
I would even say January. I mean,
January's
give it a
good.
couple,
I mean, that's-
give it a
That
couple
would
months
be
for you to
even better,
get
yeah.
instituted, and I think that's great.
We told the folks in HR today, I said, I think this is going to be a win. I said, so you better be prepared to post them tomorrow. So
All right.
we're working on that.
Yes.
I'm
Ms.
sorry.
Farrell?
One last question. This is for you via Ms. Brinson. So these substitutes are going to get, internet access and passwords, and they're going to be treated like just regular Joe employee. Okay.
Yeah, because they'll be permanent full-time employees.
Right.
They'll receive benefits.
But a lot of
they'll
times subs
receive
can't
retirement.
access, we're not allowed to access.
And that is a specific issue, and this would help resolve that
Okay.
concern, I think.
All right, so we have a first and a second. We've had discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Recommendation approved. And Dr. Barnes, thank you for the innovation that you're bringing to this huge problem, and we really appreciate it, and we're excited to see this implemented in our schools.
That goes to the team. They were working on it before I even got here.
Way
so
to
thank
go,
you.
team.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, HR. All right, next item, superintendent's report. Dr. Faust?
As you're likely aware, we are now months into 21-22 fiscal year, and the state budget has not passed. The House and Senate have each passed their version, and the budget is now awaiting a compromise, we'll say that, and approval from Governor Cooper. As our legislature and government officials continue to iron out the budget, we will continue to operate using last year's budgeting allowance. We're hopeful that a budget will pass soon. School supplies. The district is not in short supply of paper or any other supplies needed to carry out day-to-day operations of instruction. Our school executive directors, Dr. Jeffro and Mr. O'Brien, will be addressing any perceived shortages with principals this week to see where additional resources are needed. If a need is found, the district has ample resources to meet the needs. That's the end of my updates.
All right, fantastic. Thank you very much. Next item is the board chairperson's report. Just a few things to note. Last week, Ms. Crable, Mr. Bollier, and myself attended the NCSBA Fall Law Conference. It was 3 days of really great information, and we will be reporting out some information that we learned at the November meeting for the board. So I wanted to let you know that. Second, I would like to offer some accolades to our superintendent. Today, Dr. Faust was invited to participate in a superintendent's roundtable with the U.S. Department of Education. He was recommended by Jack Hoke, the executive director of the North Carolina Superintendents Association, to take part in this important dialogue with school leaders across the state. Dr. Faust, thank you for representing for our district. Also today, for Dr. Faust, I would like to share that he has been announced as one of the 2021 Wilmington Biz 100 in the influencer category. So congratulations, Dr. Faust. I know you don't like to toot your own horn, but we are very proud of the work that you are doing here, and we appreciate your leadership in New Hanover County Schools. Thank you. All right, on that note, we are moving through committee reports. Any committee reports or any comments you'd like to share?
I'd hate to put Mr. Crable on the spot, but would it be cool to give just a tiny update on what we've been working on Title IX, or?
Okay, sure. Nothing really has changed too much from the last meeting, but we are moving forward with our survey. That's our flagship, product coming out of the committee right now. It's going to be administered during the week of November the 15th, and we are currently working with the middle school and high school principals to figure out what that looks like. Each school, may have a different rollout plan for the survey. We are engaging some of our Save Promise Club students to help us with the video so that students get to hear instructions and reasoning behind the survey from their peers. So it may come across as less, scary or, intimidating. So, and then we're hoping to get the data back sometime, in December, so that we can, and we will report, as soon as we get the data back, we'll report back to the board. But everything's moving along, thanks to, Ms. Varnum and her staff, with helping, get all this stuff done. But we're excited about it, and we're excited to, again, hear the student voice, because that is so important to, our work.
All right.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Moving along, correspondence. Does anyone have any correspondence they would like to share? No? Thought Mr. Wildebohr, the hand was going up down there. All right, next item then, announcements. The following board-related meetings will be held during the month of October. The Family Communications Committee will meet October 21st at 5 p.m. for a roundtable discussion. The general public will have the option to view remotely on NHCS TV YouTube. The November regular board meeting will be held on Tuesday, November 9th, 5 p.m. at the Board of Education Center, 1805 South 13th Street. Policy Committee meeting will meet on, as of today, but this is probably going to change, we'll meet on November 9th at 9 a.m. That meeting will be held remotely, and the public may view via the NHCS TV YouTube channel. All right. I do not believe we have a need for a closed session this evening, so the additional, yes.
I just had one announcement, I'm sorry. I just wanted to say, to bring up the NAACP Parent Council, they're having an opportunity and information fair Saturday, October 30th from 1 to 3 at Ebenezer Baptist Church. It is it's a collaborative effort between the schools. It's an opportunity, an information fair for parents, students at Freeman and Snipes on that day, and I think Ms. Crable's going to be there too.
Yeah, I'm going to be there at the PTA table, PTA council table, to talk with parents about how to engage with in their school, whether they have a PTA, PTO, or any other parent organization, or give them information on how they can put together whatever group works for their school. So yeah.
And I just want to finish up by saying that there will be a short presentation from Ms. Varnum, I think, and Susan Cole. And there'll be a table there staffed and representative from both PTAs as well. So anyway, thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, we have no need for a second closed session this evening, so the final agenda item for this evening is adjournment. Mr. McManus?
I have a question.
Oh, I'm sure.
Oh my God.
Gummy bear, Dr. Fowler.
I move to adjourn. Second.
Hearing none.
Hearing none.
Yep.
Everyone have a lovely evening. Thank you very much.
All righty.